Sometimes the biggest hits come from the most unexpected places. Back in the 1970s, artists took chances with songs that were downright silly and absurd. Songs about disco dancing ducks, streaking through supermarkets, and ancient Egyptian pharaohs. Nobody expected them to work, but audiences loved them. These joke songs sold millions of copies and topped charts worldwide. Today, we're counting down 10 joke songs from the 70s that turned into global hits. Number 10. Convoy by C.W. McCall. Let's kick things off with one of the strangest #1 hits of the decade. In 1975, an advertising executive named Bill Fries created a fictional character called C.W. McCall for a bread company commercial. The character was so popular that Fries decided to record actual songs under the McCall name, partnering with musician Chip Davis, who would later find fame with Mannheim Steamroller. The song that changed everything was released in November 1975. It told the story of truck drivers forming a convoy to protest the national 55 miles per hour speed limit and other regulations that were strangling the trucking industry during the fuel crisis. The entire thing was delivered in trucker CB radio slang that most people couldn't even understand. The record company MGM wasn't sure anyone would get it. When Fries first played it for them, executives asked if anyone would understand all that CB garbage. They buried it as an album track on Black Bear Road, figuring it would disappear. But disc jockeys started pulling it out and playing it anyway. Listeners went crazy for it. The switchboards lit up with requests, and MGM realized they had something special. The song spent 6 weeks at #1 on the country charts and hit the top spot on the pop charts too. It sold over 2 million copies and inspired a whole CB radio craze across America. Millions of people who had never driven a big rig were suddenly talking like truckers, using terms like Breaker 19 and 10-4 Good Buddy.
You want to give me a 10-9 on that Big Ben?
Suddenly, everyone wanted a CB radio in their car. Stores couldn't keep them in stock. Families were using them for road trips, businesses adopted them for communication, and the lingo became part of everyday conversation. The trucker had become the cowboy of the modern era, and everyone wanted to be part of that culture. Gas station attendants were pump jockeys, police were bears or smokies, and asking someone's location meant saying, "What's your 20?"
Yeah, we got a great big convoy, ain't she a beautiful sight?
Number 9. The Streak by Ray Stevens.
Oh, yes, they call him the street.
Ray Stevens had been making novelty records since the early 1960s, but in 1974 he tapped into something that was sweeping the nation. Streaking, the act of running naked through public places, had become a bizarre cultural phenomenon. College campuses had designated streaking days, and the craze reached its peak when a man named Robert Opel streaked across the stage during the 1974 Academy Awards, right past host David Niven on live television.
Oh, yes, they call him the street.
Stevens read about streaking in a magazine while on an airplane and immediately knew it would make a great song. He wrote it quickly and rushed it into the studio. By the time his version hit stores, about a dozen other streaking songs were already competing for airplay, but Stevens' version won out. The song featured Stevens playing multiple characters, a news reporter and a hapless husband named Ethel's husband, who keeps trying to shield his wife from the sight of the streaker, yelling his famous line. The twist comes at the end when Ethel herself becomes a streaker.
The streak, the streak, the streak, the streak. Oh.
Number 8. Disco Duck by Rick Dees and his cast of idiots. If ever there was a song that shouldn't have been a hit, it was this one. Rick Dees was a disc jockey at a Memphis radio station in 1976 when he wrote a novelty song spoofing the disco craze. The concept was simple. A guy at a disco party suddenly feels compelled to dance like a duck. The duck voice wasn't even performed by Dees himself. He met a guy at his gym who could do a convincing Donald Duck impression. That man, Kenneth Pruitt, recorded the duck vocals for just $188. Disney later emphatically denied rumors that Clarence Nash, the official voice of Donald Duck, had anything to do with the record. Dees shopped the song around for 3 months before anyone would touch it. It took him 1 day to write it, but 3 months to convince anyone to record it. When it finally came out on the small Fratone label and started getting Southern airplay, RSO Records picked it up for national distribution. Here's where it gets interesting. When the song started climbing the charts, Dees' own radio station forbade him from playing it on his show, citing conflict of interest rules. When he merely mentioned it one morning, they fired him on the spot. By that point, it didn't matter. 5 days after he got fired, the song hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in October 1976.
All of a sudden I began to change. I was on the thing.
The single sold over 4 million copies and won a People's Choice Award. It stayed in the top 10 for 10 weeks, and even appeared in a scene in the movie Saturday Night Fever. Dees' manager made what he later called a huge mistake by refusing to let the song appear on the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, fearing it would hurt sales of Dees' own record. That soundtrack went on to sell 40 million copies. Number 7, My Ding-a-Ling by Chuck Berry.
Catch me playing with my ding-a-ling-a-ling, oh.
Chuck Berry had been a rock and roll legend since the 1950s. He'd written classics like Johnny B. Good, Roll Over Beethoven, and Maybelline. 6 times he'd made the top 10. He'd gone as high as number 2 with Sweet Little 16 in 1958, but he'd never hit number 1 until 1972 when he got there with the most unlikely song imaginable. The song was originally written and recorded by New Orleans producer Dave Bartholomew back in 1952. Berry had recorded his own version called My Tambourine in 1968, cleaning up some of the more suggestive lyrics. But when he performed it live, he'd slip in the original racy words. In February 1972, Berry played a festival in Coventry, England at the Locarno Ballroom. He was on a bill with Pink Floyd, Slade, Billy Preston, and comedian George Carlin. That night, Berry performed the song with all its double meanings intact, getting the audience to sing along enthusiastically. The whole thing was being recorded because Pink Floyd was scheduled to play next and the show was being captured for posterity. In the UK, the song went to number 1 and stayed there for 4 weeks. Berry's only chart topper after a career spanning nearly 2 decades was a 4th grade ditty about a child's toy that everyone knew wasn't really about a toy at all. Berry himself seemed amused by the whole thing. When asked about it years later, he simply said, "Give people what they want."
Catch me playing with my ding-a-ling-a-ling, oh.
Number 6, Afternoon Delight by Starland Vocal Band. The Starland Vocal Band started as a husband and wife duo called Fat City. Bill Danoff and Taffy Nivert had already found success co-writing Take Me Home Country Roads with John Denver. When they added singers John Carroll and Margot Chapman to form the Starland Vocal Band, they signed to Denver's Windsong Records label. Bill Danoff wrote the song in 1975 after seeing a menu at Clyde's Restaurant in Georgetown, Washington, D.C. The happy hour menu was titled Afternoon Delights and featured appetizers like spiced shrimp and hot brie with almonds. Danoff was there with bandmate Margot Chapman while his wife Taffy was recovering from cancer surgery. The title sparked an idea, and Danoff worked on the song over 6 months, often while watching Washington Redskins football games on Sundays. The result was a sweet-sounding harmony piece with lyrics full of suggestive double meanings. Many listeners didn't catch the innuendo at first, thinking it was simply about afternoon fireworks displays, which tied nicely into America's 1976 bicentennial celebration with its chorus about skyrockets in flight. Released in the summer of 1976, the song hit number 1 on July 10th, right as America was celebrating its 200th birthday. It earned a gold record and won 2 Grammy Awards, including Best New Artist. The band beat out Boston for that honor, which raised some eyebrows since Boston was having far greater commercial success. The group even got their own CBS variety show in the summer of 1977, which lasted 6 weeks and featured a then-unknown David Letterman as a regular. But they could never duplicate the success of their first single. The song made them one-hit wonders, though it remained a cultural touchstone for decades, appearing in movies like Anchorman and TV shows like Arrested Development. In 2010, Billboard named it the 20th sexiest song of all time, which amused many who'd grown up thinking it was just about fireworks and afternoon desserts. The band members themselves had different takes on the song's meaning. Taffy Danoff would sometimes tell audiences during performances that yes, the title came from the restaurant menu, but then Bill came home and they had their own afternoon delight. She'd add with a wink that they wrote the song instead of having a cigarette. Number 5. Spiders and Snakes by Jim Stafford.
I don't like spiders and snakes, and that ain't what it...
Jim Stafford was part of that wave of Southern country comedy musicians who found success in the early 70s. He'd played in bands with Kent Lavoie, who became known as Lobo, and they'd even played alongside a young Graham Parsons back in their Florida days. In 1973, Stafford wrote a song with David Bellamy, who would later find fame as half of the Bellamy brothers. The lyrics came from Bellamy's childhood growing up on a farm in rural Florida, where trying to impress girls with frogs, spiders, and snakes was just part of life.
And so we took a stroll, wound up down by the swimming hole.
The song tells the story of a shy young man who walks a girl named Mary Lou home from school. When she invites him to the swimming hole and says he can do what he wants, his idea of romance is shaking a frog at her. She makes it clear that's not the way to win her heart. Produced by Lobo, the song was released late in 1973 and started climbing the charts. The verses were spoken rather than sung, with only the chorus actually being performed musically. This gave it a storytelling quality that appealed to both country and pop audiences.
I don't like spiders and snakes and frogs, and that ain't what it...
The single spent 26 weeks on the American pop charts and peaked at number 3 in early 1974. In Canada, it went all the way to number 1. It sold over 1 million copies and was awarded a gold disc in March 1974. The song was ranked as the 16th biggest hit of the entire year by Billboard. Stafford followed it up with more novelty hits like Wildwood Weed and My Girl Bill. And he even got his own TV variety show in 1975. There he met singer Bobby Gentry of Ode to Billy Joe fame, and they married in 1978, though the marriage only lasted 2 years.
I don't like spiders and snakes, and that ain't what it...
Number 4. King Tut by Steve Martin. Steve Martin was already becoming one of the biggest comedians in America by 1978. His stand-up routines were selling out arenas, and he was making regular appearances as the host of Saturday Night Live. When he brought a song idea to SNL for the April 22, 1978 episode, he didn't expect it to become one of the show's most elaborate productions. The song was inspired by the Traveling Treasures of Tutankhamun exhibit that was touring American museums from 1976 to 1979. The show was a massive cultural phenomenon, with about 8 million people standing in long lines to see the artifacts. Martin, with his signature mix of intellectualism and absurdity, decided to satirize the craze. Producer Lorne Michaels seized on Martin's embryonic idea and turned it into a spectacular production number. Martin performed it wearing stereotypical Egyptian garb with an elaborate headdress, backed by the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, who were credited as the Toot Uncommons. The highlight came when saxophonist Lou Marini emerged from a sarcophagus painted in gold body paint to blow a solo, sending the audience into hysterics. The song itself was wonderfully ridiculous, with absurd claims about King Tut being born in Arizona, moving to Babylonia, and eating a crocodile. It featured both a traditional snake charmer melody and a funky disco beat.
Now if I know that line up just to see...
Released as a single in May 1978, The song sold over 1 million copies and reached number 17 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was particularly huge in cities where the Tut exhibit had appeared. In Chicago, where it had shown at the Field Museum, radio station WLS played it so much that they ranked it as their 11th biggest hit of the year. The song also appeared on Martin's comedy album, A Wild and Crazy Guy, which sold over 1 million copies. For a comedy novelty record to achieve that kind of success proved Martin was operating on a different level. Number 3, Werewolves of London by Warren Zevon.
Werewolves of London.
Warren Zevon was a talented but troubled songwriter who'd been bouncing around the music industry for years. He'd worked as a jingle writer and served as bandleader for the Everly Brothers before his friend Jackson Browne helped him secure a record deal with Asylum Records. The song started as a joke. Phil Everly of the Everly Brothers had watched the 1935 film Werewolf of London on television and suggested to Zevon that he adapt the title for a song and dance craze. Zevon, along with bandmates Leroy Marinell and Waddy Wachtel, sat down and wrote the whole thing in about 15 minutes, trading ridiculous lyrics back and forth.
Werewolves of London.
Jackson Browne saw the potential in the song and started performing it at his own concerts as early as 1975, always giving Zevon credit. When it came time to record it for Zevon's 1978 album Excitable Boy, they tried at least 7 different configurations of musicians before getting it right. Fleetwood Mac's Mick Fleetwood played drums, and John McVie played bass on the final version. Zevon actually objected when his label chose it as the album's first single. He would have preferred Johnny Strikes Up the Band or Tenderness on the Block, but Elektra Records overruled him, and the song became a quick hit. It peaked at number 21 on the Billboard Hot 100 in May 1978, the only top 40 hit of Zevon's career. The song stayed on the charts for over a month and introduced Zevon to a mainstream audience. BBC Radio 2 listeners later voted its opening line about seeing a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand as the best opening line in any song. Zevon himself remained bemused by the song's success, later saying he didn't know why it became such a hit and that they didn't think it was suitable for radio, but he acknowledged it was better to be remembered for something than nothing. The song got a second life years later when Kid Rock sampled it heavily for his 2008 hit All Summer Long. Number 2, Convoy by C.W. McCall. We mentioned this one at the start, but it deserves its own full spotlight. When Bill Fries, working as C.W. McCall, released this song in November 1975, nobody, not even the record label, believed it would work. The song was written with Chip Davis, who composed the music while Fries wrote the lyrics. It came from Fries' own experience of driving in a growing group of vehicles out of Denver. The whole thing was performed as a first-person trucker monologue, backed by a country arrangement and punctuated with a gentle choral call and response on the chorus. What made it work was timing. American truckers were genuinely frustrated with the fuel crisis, the 55 miles per hour speed limit, and increasing government regulation. The song tapped into that anti-authority sentiment while celebrating the brotherhood of the road. The CB radio craze was just beginning, and the song's liberal use of trucker slang made listeners feel like they were part of an exclusive club. The single sold over 2 million copies by December 1975 and was awarded a gold disc. It topped both the country and pop charts, spending 1 week at number 1 on the Hot 100. In the UK, it reached number 2. The success launched a nationwide CB radio craze, with millions of Americans installing the radios in their cars and learning trucker lingo.
Oh, yes, they call him the street.
Hollywood came calling, and in 1978, director Sam Peckinpah made a movie inspired by the song, starring Chris Christopherson, Ali McGraw, and Ernest Borgnine. McCall also recorded a sequel called Round the World with the Rubber Duck, though it was nowhere near as successful. Number 1, A Fifth of Beethoven by Walter Murphy. Let's close with one that proved you didn't even need words to have a novelty hit. Walter Murphy was a 23-year-old musical prodigy who asked himself what would happen if Beethoven liked disco. The answer was this instrumental mashup that brought classical music crashing into the polyester-filled heart of 1970s disco culture. Murphy took Beethoven's Fifth Symphony and completely reimagined it with a pulsing disco beat, synthesizers, and funk elements. He played almost every instrument on the recording himself, though he later assembled a band for live performances. The success of A Fifth of Beethoven opened doors for other classical disco fusions. Though none achieved quite the same level of success, Murphy's career took an interesting turn. He went on to compose music for television series and even worked on The Tonight Show. The song itself became a time capsule of that unique moment when disco ruled the world, and anything seemed possible if you just added the right beat. These 10 songs prove that sometimes the biggest hits come from the most unexpected places. None of these artists were trying to create timeless classics. They were making records that were meant to be funny, absurd, or just plain silly. But audiences connected with them in ways nobody predicted. The 1970s were a unique time in music history. Radio was still the dominant force, and programmers were willing to take chances on weird, wonderful songs that might never get airplay today. These novelty hits gave us some of the decade's most memorable moments, and decades later, they still bring smiles to people's faces. If you enjoyed this trip down memory lane, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about the music that defined our lives. What's your favorite novelty song from the 70s? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.